Oh. Okay, so we have made it to communication skills and communication techniques for individuals with communication and sensory impairments. So this PowerPoint has been created by Jasmine Spence. She's a licensed clinical social worker who still works contract with our agency. She's amazing. Yes, and then also Miss Leslie De La Riva. MA, MFT intern, and I don't know if she's licensed yet, but at the time of this creation of this PowerPoint, so this was created by therapists. Some are still with our agency, others are not, and we're very grateful for their work. Yes.
Give credit where credit's due. So the purpose of this part of the training is to really be honing in on our communication skills, helping to identify communication skills and strategies that are going to be most effective with our clients and the different populations that we work with, and then also giving some practice. So this part is a little bit more interactive, and we'll give some opportunities for us to do role plays, various scenarios of how we can be the best communicators possible.
Yes. I just informed Sophia that
Sophia's ready.
that will be maybe role playing on the fly. Again, so I'm Natalie. I am the clinical supervisor in the North. My goodness gracious. And again, with Miss Audrey Snow, LCSW, and started with our agency as an intern. Yes, and worked her way up. Beautiful. So for our icebreaker, imagine you could instantly learn a language. What would you choose? What language would you choose? So we're all going to interact and engage.
I'd choose Spanish.
Spanish, and why is that?
It seems to be our population here has grown more Spanish than not.
I picked Tagalog.
Yeah. Solid.
Because
just because of a lot of nurses, doctors, and employees speak it.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
to communicate to other professionals.
Absolutely. Especially in that like assisted living realm, right? That real caretaking at the end of like older stages of life. Thank you.
I would choose Spanish as well because I come across a lot of Hispanics and I can't interpret what they're saying. So what I do a lot, I use Google Translate and I speak to them in that language as well because I had a lot of clients. The first thing they say, oh, no English, they'll speak German or whatever. I even called LA to the consulate and they translated for me as well. There was someone that spoke Egyptian and just so happened someone there that was able to interpret. Because there's ways to get around it because they don't want to communicate. I said, oh, we can get around that. Let me find a translator. We're going to get this solved. So,
good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear that already. Tanasha,
Tanasha.
thank you.
Yeah.
Tanasha, because that's a big part of barriers when we're talking about communication, and heard that from a couple of the other participants already. So really cool to hear what you've done to be able to mitigate some of those barriers, work around it.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Same thing with our employees. We ordered translators that go in their ear. So then it automatically translates as the resident speaks. So five or six of our caregivers have translators in our ear because we have a few that only speak Spanish.
Yeah, that is so cool, Nicole. So cool.
And that's exactly, I found like in my last profession, a lot of employees just turn them away. Oh, we can't assist you. We can't do this. And I hate that. That's an ill feeling not to be able to assist someone because it's a language barrier. Like we're going to get you assistance any way we can. What needs to be done.
Absolutely.
Not fair to them at all.
Definitely. How about for you, Shanita? What would your language be?
Um, I would say Spanish, but I failed that in high school, and they put me in French, and I passed that one. So I would like Spanish. My son taught himself Spanish because he used to be in the streets. Taught his own self like that. I think maybe Spanish, because that seems to be a more frequently used language now
Mhm.
here. So even it's just the basics.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Angela? If you could instantly learn a language, what would it be?
I think for me, mine would probably be French.
Very
I just think
cool.
it's a really pretty language.
It does. It sounds good. Sounds really good.
Yeah. I always wanted to learn Japanese, but now my daughter's taking Japanese and it's really hard. So I'm like, it would not never be that again.
Yes. How about for you, Sophia? What would the language be that you choose?
I already speak a little bit of Spanish, so I'd probably go with like Mandarin because that's really up and coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, is more popular.
And my go-to, I really sign, if I could, American Sign Language. Because that's a population, right, that have a lot of barriers, I would say. Because I don't know how Google Translate could do that one. I'm sure there's a way, but
I'm sure that actually, does anybody know if you can translate American Sign like via video? If it will. That's a
I don't know about that, but you
Technology,
can
anything
start
is
it.
possible.
we're gonna go with most likely, yeah. To be done. There's a way.
yeah.
There's a way. I'm with a lot of the group here. If I could instantly learn a language, would pick Spanish, because I think there's such a big need. Especially out here in Las Vegas, Nevada, there's a huge Spanish speaking population. So that would be my preferred. Thank you all for answering that.
Thank
Really
you.
cool to hear people's thoughts on that.
And again, there's this TED Talk that we've never been able to pull up. So communication, right? A process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. Ooh, so we are communicating even if we're not using words. What?
This is a quote by Lee Atwater, and anybody who'd like to share their thoughts about it is welcome to. This quote is, "Perception is reality. That's the way that it is in this world." Does anybody have any thoughts about that quote?
Sorry, I
Shanita?
had to shut the door. What? Can you repeat what you said?
Just wondering if anybody has any thoughts about this quote.
Perception is reality.
Mhm.
That's true, because people can assume things by perception without really knowing the truth behind it. So I can
Yeah.
agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I
me.
like- Go ahead. You said like me. I like that, when you're talking about truths, two people can have different truths, and that doesn't make it any less valid. And so when we're trying to be good communicators, we're not only looking at our agenda, we are seeking to understand that person, their perspectives. A lot of times we have to go deeper than just the surface. We really need to be curious. That's how I like to look at this quote.
Mm. And for especially the population that we work with, right? If they're experiencing mental health symptoms, and then you add in some substance use disorders as well, right? Their perception of their own reality may be very different than ours. And if we're trying to convince them that what they're experiencing is not reality, that's not really going to go well. So I think there's another layer when we're looking at the population that we work with as well. So it's just another layer dynamic.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. Oh no. Okay. Everyone has a different perception on things. This is what makes us all unique, right? Also, depending on our socioeconomic background, our cultural, our spiritual, religious beliefs, that is what makes us all unique, right? And something I enjoy about like being a human is that every one of us has a different skill set, right? And there are nurses for a different reason, because I have no business, collecting blood with a needle, right? That's why I went into social work. And then so we all have our own specialties, which makes, our diverse population. When communicating with others and clients, one should be mindful of our body language, right? When we're working with those who are coming from the street, coming from the tunnels, right? Or may have been really isolating or been on a game system the last 5 years, right? They're gonna not be able to really interact socially to maybe what we're used to. And the verbiage that we use and the tone that we use can be misperceived by others. So we really need to be mindful about who we're talking to, how we approach them, and always, right, consider of who we're serving, our clients. And just because I'm her supervisor for her internship, I'm not going to stand up and talk down to her like this. Right? That's rude. And then there's that power differential, right? Did you hear my volume come up? Even my posture, right? I stood up. How dare I? Right? And that could be very intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you for being like anything. So I like to be very, but examples, right? Because we can also be doing those things without even knowing it, right? So just being aware.
We have different types of communication. And when we're at work and we're doing our thing with clients, we're using all of these. We're doing verbal, nonverbal, written. And as was discussed earlier, if there's barriers to one of these types of communication, a lot of times we can work around that. We can accommodate the needs of the client. So if we have a client who has lower literacy, so written information is not going to be as beneficial to them, we could break things down. We could explain that verbally. We could give them some other alternatives for that same information.
Absolutely. Why is knowing the 3 types of communication important? So you will be using verbal, nonverbal, and written communication within your job duties. Yes. But the people we serve as well on their behalf, with people and entities, right? Other agencies that we're referring to, other professionals within WC Health. So it's essential to understand WC Health expectations around communication. One, I would say with written communication is if we get an email concerning a client or a situation, it would be professional and polite and to respond to the email. That would be nice.
Yes, absolutely. And this part of it is all found in our employee handbook, which is in our portal. Kind of gives the guide for what the expectation of communication is here at WC Health. So as a general, we have 4 different types of communication styles. Has anybody in this video or in this call heard of these 4 communication styles?
Yes.
Yeah. Does anybody want to share what their personal style for communication is?
People think I'm aggressive.
So we
I try not to be aggressive. I try to be more assertive.
Mhm. Yeah, sure. And I like, Nicole, you said people think, right? Because that's perception. And so where you think that you're trying assertive, the feedback is that it might come off as aggressive. Yeah. Go ahead, Shanita. Did you have your hand up too?
No, I just asked Tanya because I don't think I'm aggressive. I think I'm very assertive. I don't cross lines with communication. I feel like say what you mean what you say. But Tanya just said I'm a little bit of both, so.
And we can float, right? Sometimes it might look like people have an easier time being assertive with clients, and then in their personal lives, like they are the most passive person that anybody ever meets. So we can absolutely fluctuate in these styles. Anybody else have any self-recognition of where you might fall?
I believe I'm assertive, but I can come off as being very direct.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very direct. I don't like to sugarcoat anything. I gave it to them direct, but then I have to learn there's certain people you have to go take different avenues because some people can't relate to being direct. They get offended and some others do. So it's just to know who you're working with. Know your client.
Yeah.
And I don't like to pacify things as well either.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard because I'm not doing them any justice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Such strong points that you're making there. We can be all of these things direct and really honest, really transparent, and still have that approach that is compassionate and caring. So we're going to talk about all of those components of that assertive, because that's what we're aspiring for, is assertive communication. Angela, do you want to share before we moved on, or anybody else who hasn't?
I think that for me, people would say that I'm aggressive. But I think I'm just assertive. And like she said, I'm just very direct, very forward, but some people do take it wrong. But I think work-wise, I'm assertive. But when it comes to like home life, I think I'm more passive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Angela.
And for me, I would say I'm assertive, but if I'm telling someone something they don't want to hear, then I am aggressive, right, from their perspective. So finding a way to say it with like love and kindness, or, like compassion and kindness. So finding that way, that middle ground, how to be assertive without being so blunt, right, is where I am on that, finding that dance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're saying something that somebody doesn't want to hear, they're going to call you aggressive anyway, even if you're not being aggressive. So you have to take that with a grain of salt because you're not getting your way. Now I'm being aggressive towards you. But if you were getting your way, I'd be, so passive.
Sophia.
I would say I'm assertive, but I'm guilty sometimes of like if I have to tell somebody something difficult, I might lean more passive. But I'm trying to get out of the habit of doing that because sometimes it is just better for people to get the truth as it is.
Yes. And do you think that will be important as you move into the career of social work?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for sharing.
Okay, assertive communication, right, is a communication style that hopefully we're all striving to adhere to, right? Where a person stands up for their own needs and beliefs, while in addition respecting the needs of others, right? So it's finding, that balance. Assertive communication is defined by with mutual respect, uh, that reciprocity, right? Diplomacy, directness. I had a client who she used the analogy of sweeping stuff under the rug, right? So I actually had a rug in my office and we put all this stuff under the rug and then we actually tried to walk on it, right? That was a hazard. And so by being more assertive, right, we don't have any barriers or divots, right, in our foundation. So um, if and sweeping stuff under the rug, right, it may have been maybe how we're raised, right, or it could be more of aggressive or passive aggressive. So assertive may be something new to us, but I really like using the analogy of we're no longer sweeping stuff under the rug. Being direct.
And direct, if you've gotten that feedback, that's not the same as being harsh or critical or abrasive. I would say if you're getting that type of feedback, that's going to look more like our aggressive. But if you're having people tell you you're very direct, you're very to the point, blunt, that's more in our assertive camp. And so some of these other traits of the assertive communication is being able to clearly state needs and wants, making eye contact, listening to others without interruption, or without intentional interruption. We're human sometimes, and especially I notice over video calls, it gets difficult to do, but really listening intentionally, having an appropriate speaking volume. Natalie demonstrated that with Sophia. Thanks, Sophia. Steady tone of voice and confident body language. So this doesn't just translate to how we show up as professionals. It's also in working with clients. If we can model this for our clients, they're going to start to develop and mirror this skill set from us, and it's going to help them even outside of their treatment while they're here. And so when we are having these hard conversations with clients, there's difficult conversations. We're having to be really assertive and really direct. It's important that we can model that in healthy ways for clients, because that translates to their abilities to use these skills as well.
Yes. And, if we're role modeling or mirroring, right, someone is more inclined to be receptive to that information versus if we're like telling someone what to do, like they need to do something. So here's some, we're going to take a break and then we're going to really dive in more. So hydrate yourselves, use the restroom, get some fresh air, and we'll see each other at 11. We'll do 11:10. Okay, thank you. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully, I don't know. Doesn't look like my video. There, it came back on. It took a while. Okay, so examples of assertive communication. So, Sophia and I can, we're going to role play since we're in the same room. We're going to do the first one. And I don't know if anybody else, oh yeah, there's also 2 other individuals in the same room. So maybe they could role play maybe the second or third one. Aha. So a way for me to say to be aggressive or passive aggressive. Well, if I wasn't the only one doing chores, I would have more time to do some yard work. Feelings, but if I was being more assertive, right? I'm feeling frustrated that I'm carrying all the workload of the chores at home. What could you say? How could you respond in an assertive manner?
In an assertive manner, like responding to what you said.
Yes.
I acknowledge that you're feeling frustrated about, taking on a lot of the housework. Like, how can we work this out together so that you have more time?
Yes. I love that right? How can we work this out? I know a lot of times with our clients that could be very, very productive, and it's not separating us, right? It's uniting us together to find a solution. Thank you. That was good. Anybody else? Nicole?
Usually I just to make sure I'm communicating correctly, I'll usually just ask them, be like, do you understand what I'm saying? And if they say, like, they'll usually say yes or no. Okay, what did you hear? And then they'll repeat back to me. And if that's not what I'm trying to portray, then I know they didn't really understand, and I kind of explain it a little more.
That's such good in the moment feedback gathering, because sometimes perception, right? We can think that it's crystal clear. Like, we could not have said it any better. It was gold, and the other party is lost. And so it's really a great question to ask, what are you understanding? How could I better help you understand this? Really trying to get from that other person, how are they taking it in? Because not only do we all communicate differently, we all interpret. Thank you. Let's speak it all. We all interpret information differently. So that's awesome, Nicole. I love that questioning when you're in conversation with people.
And my example, what you just said, Audrey, is I've always used, we all read from the same Bible, but everybody interprets it differently.
Yeah, that analogy resonates. Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Angela, any feedback?
I'm here. I'm sorry.
I did not hear that.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Angela.
Sorry, I just got back. Sorry, guys.
You're good. You're good. We're just looking at these examples of assertive communication and how people are sharing some of the strategies they use to assertively communicate. And then Natalie and Sophia had done a role play of the first scenario here. We saw that you missed. Yeah. So looking at this, the second example, it says, I won't be able to take you to the airport on Friday. I've had a long week and I want to rest. Would anybody here feel uncomfortable saying that? That's pretty assertive. It's a no.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
We can
Sorry,
say
I'll
no
help
and-
you get an Uber.
And sometimes for people that helps them in, being assertive is then giving another suggestion or an offer. No, I'm at my max, I'm at capacity. But you might try so-and-so, or you might call an Uber.
Can I give you an example of this exact thing happened with my bonus mom with her friend that she wanted her to take her to the airport? She wanted her to take her to the airport, and she was like, I don't want to get up at 4 a.m. because originally she said yes, but then she was like, I can't do it. Get one of your kids to do it. They stopped talking for over a year because she was mad that she wouldn't get up at 4 a.m. to take her. I'm not losing no sleep. Sorry. You
No.
can be mad, but you have alternatives. I'm not your only alternative. So
Yeah. And a lot of times we're working with clients that, sometimes as a trauma response, have a hard time saying no, right? Sometimes it's a big people pleasing tendency. If I say no, people are going to like me less. If I say no, they're going to think X, Y, and Z about me. And so when we can model this, I had just a small example in IOP the other day. We're going on break and a client asked to drink from my water, and I said, nope, I don't share my water. Like, that's my boundary. And they're totally able to be like, okay. And so there's these small examples happen all the time where we can say no. And that is, it's not us being mean. It's not us being insensitive. It's just that we all have boundaries. And for me, no one drinks out of my water. That's my water. So in small ways, when we can do this and be really clear, and really it's going to help our clients too.
I've had this situation just recently with someone here who, as an example, doesn't want their roommate to feel some type of way. So they're consistently cleaning and doing stuff. And it's like, and I don't know, you can tell me if my approach was right. And I did explain to her that it is not your responsibility to take care of someone else that's an adult. We are all adults, and you do for you, they need to do for them. Of course, she didn't want to report it because she didn't want any conflict or any problems, with this particular roommate. But that was a prime example, what you just gave, of someone feeling like, well, not necessarily I don't want to have someone mad at me. I don't want to ruffle any feathers, or I want to keep the peace, so I'm going to be submissive to this person. No, you don't. You set boundaries and you let them know that this is not for me to do. All I need is your help in doing it. And I told her, use that as an example. I need your help in doing all of this because I can't do it by myself,
Yeah. And also
outside me thought something else though, but
right? Or also for housing staff to do a room check, not just that room, but a whole, actually like room check the rooms. So then it's not just like that particular room and not starting out, is an option. Audrey, I didn't know if you were wanted to touch on that.
Definitely. Just that I think you gave really good feedback to a client, and you really helped kind of, and this is a lot of what we do in case management and therapy. It's a lot of reinforcing these things for people that have not had their needs met in so long. So for this person, she thought her role was, I have to keep the room immaculate. I have to clean up behind this person. I have to write X, Y, and Z for this person and their needs so that everything can be copacetic and peaceful. And that's not the reality of the situation, that there's two adults in this room, and that it sounds like you were encouraging her to have that conversation with her roommate, right? And for her to set some boundaries for herself in that situation. And then I think that's the other really important part of case management is monitoring. Okay, how did that conversation go? Okay, how is the room dynamic going now? Or do they need to sit down, both of them, with you or with some other staff member to help mediate that conversation? I think
We
it's
actually
such
did.
a crucial role. Yeah, great job.
We actually did because she has OCD and she just, everything has to be immaculate. She's expecting and she doesn't want bugs and she doesn't. So she feels it's this person not doing it, then I got to do it because they won't. And I don't want these problems. So
Mm.
yeah, so we did have a conversation and they felt some type of way, but I'm sorry. You just as grown as everybody else in here.
And then I think the other part, because you just brought some of the emphasis of mental health symptoms are kind of what adds play here. So then being able to link to psychiatry and link to therapy for that continued support in the situation for that individual is the follow-up there as well.
Yes.
She's linked.
Beautiful. Okay, so we can practice some more assertive communication. So pick a scenario. Those who have yet to Tanasha, I don't know where she is. We talked about like the airport. I don't have time to take you. How would someone assertively communicate one of these scenarios?
I know you have plans for it. Oh, sorry. How will we respond to that?
Yes. Imagine somebody saying this to you when it's in direct quotes, or you're in this situation, like in the second one, because it's not a quote, it's just a scenario. But the first and the third, you're responding, somebody says this to you, and you're giving the assertive response.
Am I doing the professional me or the real me?
We're doing professional here.
I'm just kidding. Well, that's not professional because I'm not watching your kids at work.
Oh,
We're doing so assertive.
I know, I'm just
Assertive. Because it could be both the personal or it could be in the professional, but we're trying for assertive.
assertive, yes.
well. Okay, let me get out my head for the real me. Give me a second.
Anybody else?
If someone asked me and I had other plans, I would say, hey, maybe we can find somebody else to watch them because I can't.
Yeah,
Do you have anybody else?
there you go. There you go. Because you're still bought into this, right? It seems like maybe they're your kids as well. So you're not going to be tough cookies, figure it out. But setting that boundary of, no, I have plans. I can't watch them. How else could we figure this out?
And being direct that you're not an option, right? So that way they're not banking on you because you have told them I'm not an option. We'll have to figure out something else. I like that.
Yeah,
That's
great job, Nicole.
Yeah, good job.
Well,
I think for the last one on the money borrowing one, since Zelle and Cash App are an option nowadays, I would say something like, hey, you can Zelle me the money and then I'll pay for it.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, you never. So what my grandmother always told me is you say, all my money's tied up in stocks and bonds. That's a nice way of saying no.
I love that.
I was like,
But you know what? kind of makes me wonder there, Nicole, is what's wrong with saying, no, you can't have my money. No, I can't buy that for you. No, it's not an option for me to do that for you. Because then kind of even, I know it's like the more kind of gracious way of saying it, but
Right.
no is okay too. No, my check is my check. My earnings are my earnings. And I think we see that a lot with our clients specifically. They will give
Right.
it off of their back, and they also need a shirt. They will give their SNAP, their EBT, but they also need that. And so I think
Right.
is sometimes it's coaching. I had a client and he's in IOP and he's like, I keep getting asked for people to bum my cigarettes, and I don't have any more cigarettes. And so everybody in the group is kind of like, keep your cigarettes, dude. Like, you don't have to give to anybody something that's yours.
Hmm.
Well,
And so I think sometimes we can be as direct as, no, I can't do that for you. No, I don't want to do that. Or even just, no, we don't have to explain ourselves.
right.
And I have an example of that too. So my daughter just moved back in recently. I've been an empty nester for a few years, and she moved back in with her boyfriend and my grandson, who's 4. So she feels that just because she lives at home, I'm a built-in babysitter. And I tell her, no, it's a choice. It's okay for me to say no. And she's like, but why? I said, I don't have to give an explanation. I just want to lay around all day and not do absolutely nothing because that's my choice. My children are grown. So if I choose to keep him today, it's my choice. I don't have to give an explanation or reason why.
No,
It's your responsibility.
that's a really good example, and kind of speaks to, sometimes people have a certain expectation. And so you really matched your daughter's expectation with what your own expectations are for the arrangement, for the situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I remind her, you being here is not supposed to be an inconvenience for me as well.
Yeah.
So she's responsible for buying her own groceries, hygiene products, everything.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Boundaries are really important in healthy relationships. Really important.
I used to be guilty of that with my mom. When I first had my son, I'm like, you're just sitting at home. Why you can't watch the and her example was, mine are grown. Okay.
Yeah.
All she said, but I'm
Those
careful.
examples. Those are
Yeah.
Now I agree with Nicole on the borrowing money, the money borrowing thing with Zelle and Cash App and all those different ways. If you have it, but you just don't have it on you, go ahead and send it, then I'll pay for it. But I'm not waiting. No thank you.
Yeah, what Angela had shared with that,
Oh,
absolutely.
Angela, I'm sorry.
It's a different modality now that we have.
Yeah. And so now we're going to move on to aggressive communication. Through aggressive communication, a person expresses that only their needs, wants, and feelings matter, right? And the other person is bullied and their needs are ignored, right? Kind of like putting someone in the corner so the other person can get what they want. That also can happen a lot to our clients, right? With certain roommates.
Mhm.
And being aware of that and encouraging them to advocate for themselves, even asking for a room switch, right? If there's accommodations that could be, right, to cause less harm. I know that roommate, they have to have a roommate most times, right? But finding maybe where we can find a better fit. When
Charge it.
And then, so some of the traits of the aggressive communication, and I'm sure we've all seen these are not new to us. Someone becoming easily frustrated, someone speaking in a loud or overbearing way, an unwillingness to compromise, use of criticism, humiliation, domination. These could be like insults, character attacks in conversations. Frequently interrupts or does not.
can we do it real fast? Sorry.
Should we do the box? Okay.
Are you able to mute yourself, please, Nicole?
Oh yeah.
Thank you. frequently interrupts or does not listen, and disrespectful towards others. So in situations that you all have had with clients and maybe have seen this aggressive communication being portrayed, how have you handled it? What do you do?
I had a client like that, but me and Juan had to tag team him because I'm explaining policy in housing and the importance of meeting with case management, and he wanted to do his own thing. So, of course, he got frustrated, and now I'm talking to him like he's a child and all that, like kind of like Natalie was saying, when they don't hear what they want to hear, now you're being aggressive, So after explaining to him that I'm just telling you what the policies are here in order for you to be here or stay here, we can either abide by them or we can give you a discharge date. So you let me know what you want to do. And Juan explained it to him as well. And he mellowed out after that, even though he's gone now. But his whole demeanor and everything changed. But I felt myself getting a little irritated. And I know in posture, as you guys were speaking of, I kind of shift when I'm getting a little irritated now. But and that's in order not to speak in a way. So I have my coping mechanism.
Sounds like you're being mindful of it, being really aware of that. And that's really natural. When we're met with aggressive, the natural response for most, all of us, is going to be to match it. And what we know about aggressive meeting aggressive is it's a recipe for disaster. It doesn't de-escalate anything. And so where you're saying, Shanita, you were able to get one, you were able to give choices, give options, be able to, maybe you had explained yourself a couple of times at that point, but to give some patience to that, give yourself some credit, because it's not easy to do. When we're being met with aggressive, a lot of times it really activates our system. So we might notice our heart is starting to go. Now we're feeling the blood kind of pumping into our face. Our cheeks might start to get red, right? It's some of these responses that we can notice and we can check so that we don't respond in the aggressive as well.
Right. Yeah. That's what I practice on a lot.
Yeah. I'm gonna get plenty of opportunities to practice.
I've learned the monotone talk. That's what keeps me calm. Just the monotone level when addressing an issue and not elevating or escalating myself. Those are joys of working with therapy. I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Yes. And aggressive also role modeling, right? That patients don't have to, that they don't need to become aggressive in our program to get their needs met. Right. And also role modeling that, because that definitely probably could be a learned behavior or a survival, right, technique that and so showing them that, like, with intentionality, that it doesn't have to be that way in this situation. And that does take time, of course, to for somebody to find that balance, right? Passive communication. During passive communication, a person prioritizes the needs and wants and feelings of others, even at their own expense. A lot of times our client in IOP, right, they're giving to others what they don't even have to give. And also, if someone, especially with in recovery with substance use disorders, right? Oh, I'm trying to help so-and-so stay sober. And I'm like, well, what about your sobriety, right? You've got just a little bit, like 3 days ahead of that. Like, is that going to be substantial? Like, are you going to be able to continue this? Is that a realistic expectation? So always encouraging them to refer others to professional support so that the individual isn't trying to take that on themselves. Passive, taken advantage of. Some people are just also may have some limitations, right? Either if it's IQ under 70 or just being right, history of abuse, right? That they don't know any different, but to be passive. And so if we're kind of seeing this in housing, like, hey, don't let them, bring them off to the side. Like, hey, I see that you keep giving so-and-so your food stamp card, right? Could you practice on telling them no? Actually, a great example, I had an IOP on Friday. Some gentleman was trying to get a female participant to write his homeboy in prison, right? And I was like, nah. And she was like, thank you for having my back on that, right? So there was a, so yeah, if you see something speaking out, oh, we don't do that here, or you're gonna have to find somebody else to write them in prison, that sort of thing. But that was really cool because I could see she was new to IOP and he was like kind of like being, hey, no, you shouldn't. So I stood up for her. Once I stood up for her, she was able to stand up for herself. So that was really cool. And she thanked me out loud for having her back. And I was like, yes. And then finding our voice, right? So we can advocate for ourselves. So there's a recent example.
Yeah. Some of the traits of the passive communication are soft-spoken or quiet, allows others to take advantage, prioritizes needs of others, poor eye contact or looks down or away, does not express one's own needs or wants, and a lack of confidence. I'm sure we've seen this a lot in our work with clients. And then I'm sure that we've also seen as they've gone through treatment and they start to have these successes, they start to make progress towards their goals. They start to have more pro-social engagement, that these skills that we're talking about get utilized, and we see less of this. I know I've seen it from clients.
Mm-hmm. I'm really excited, like the woman I was talking about in IOP. So Friday was her first session. And then usually by the time they're completing, right, it's really cool to see people's confidence increase, them feeling more comfortable in their own skin and feeling confident to advocate for themselves. It's really cool. Who else has seen a client transform while receiving services with us? Yes?
Mm-hmm. I've seen that happen a lot just over the few sessions of IOP. A lot more confidence, being able to advocate, being able to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
We have one resident that will stay in his room most of the time. So I made it a point to make sure my caregivers go get him and bring him out into the lunchroom and let him sit on the side by himself. So he's still kind of isolated a little bit, not so crazy around all other 50 other residents. So then he started coming out more and more and more. And so he gets out of his room. Otherwise, he'll just stay in his room the whole time.
Yeah.
So more social, I guess.
Good job.
Great. Yeah, and it's all about our comfortability. If we never have those opportunities to push ourselves to utilize some of these skills that we're talking about, we can't get any stronger in them. So that's great that staff supported that you had initiated that, Nicole, and that you're seeing some major benefit.
On a side note for that, he came down and was singing karaoke the other day. So
Oh, no
thought
way.
I'd let you know that. Yeah.
Which he's never done.
So cute. We love that. That's a win. That's a huge one. That takes a lot of confidence. Nat, do you want this one?
Yes, passive aggressive communication, a pattern of indirectly expressing negative feelings instead of openly addressing them. There's a disconnect between what a person who exhibits passive aggressive behavior says and what they actually do, right? If I say, oh, I'm not mad that IOP didn't wipe down the tables on Friday, and then I'm going to hold them over, right, the time. I'm going to make sure they're late and they miss transport, so they have to walk, right? That would be a passive aggressive communication, where I'm holding a grudge. They don't know I'm holding a grudge, but I'm going to get them, right? And I'm going to do so by having them walk, which I would never do. But so that would be where I'm feeling upset and I'm going to take action without them really knowing it. Very passive aggressive, behind their back, below the belt type of stuff. Oof.
Yeah, I think this one comes up a lot of times as well when clients are still learning how to communicate their needs and where they might not feel comfortable to do that. I think in roommate situations, we see this a lot. A lot of the passive aggressives kind of can come out. And so it's really important when we see it that we can call it for what it is. Because I've definitely seen this. I've said something to a client, they took it a certain way, they told me they were fine. They were not fine. I'm watching them. They're sitting there with their arms crossed. They stopped talking in the session, but they're fine. And in encouraging that client, hey, I'm noticing what just changed in your body positioning. I'm noticing you shut down. Can we talk about it? And about 2 minutes later, she said, yeah, no, I was really angry. I was really upset. Okay, let's talk about that. Like, how could my approach have been different? Give me feedback. And she did. And we were able to get through what was a really small situation, but she was ready to bolt out of the room. She was ready to just be done. And I think it's really helpful when we can have clients work through some of the discomforts of miscommunication, because they're not going to just see it here in our program. It's going to happen when they're at work with a boss. It's going to happen in their relationships. It's going to happen, in these other situations. So sometimes it looks like muttering to themselves, and sometimes loud enough that the other person can hear what they're saying, but they're not actually talking to that person. Sometimes it's not acknowledging anger. This client was very upset and was saying that she was fine. We can see that, and so we can call it. Facial expressions that don't match how they feel. So like smiling when somebody's angry, or, sometimes it could look like they're tearful, but they're saying that everything's fine as well. That could be where someone is kind of pacifying or being passive about expressing their emotion. Using sarcasm. So these are like the slight digs, but there's a lot of truth behind it. They really meant it. It was a joke, but it was so serious. Denying that there is a problem, or appearing cooperative while purposely doing things to annoy and disrupt. So kind of some of the defiance that we can see from clients. Like, it's kind of like an adult tantrum. Like, they're not getting their way in it, and so they're gonna show that they're not cooperative, but they're saying that they are, right? Like, oh, of course, I'm going with the flow and everything's calm, everything's good. But they might keep having some of these disputes that go against that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll be like, oh, what you're saying and what you're doing doesn't appear to be aligning. So I'm confused. Can you help me understand? Okay, you're right. Like, usually sometimes when I come at that approach, they'll admit what's going on. Especially a lot of times our clients want to know if we're slick enough to catch on, like if we know what's going on, right? So they're just also assessing if we're paying attention, if we are meeting them where they're at, if we actually are being present and having those intentional conversations. I think also sometimes they're testing us.
Yeah. And a lot of times the most therapeutic and just best practice of it is to address it, because sometimes that's a need that's not being met. And if we can get to that level and see eye to eye, we can help that person meet that need. And then it can be a learning opportunity. Hey, I know that you weren't fine. And I know that something was going on, but how does that work out in the rest of your life? What's the response from other people when you might communicate in this way? It can kind of be a learning opportunity for them of how to be more assertive to get their needs better met.
Yes. And then, verbal communication, right? Kind of how my pitch and tone and contact when I was standing over Sophia, how that really can switch the dynamic of the conversation and the tone. And I use IOP as an example a lot because that's 9 hours a week of my clinical experience here at WC Health. And it was brought to my attention that I'm pretty good at matching the tone of my client. So if someone's very happy and upbeat, I will be happy and upbeat. And then if someone's like really going through it and really depressive, right, I am pretty good at mirroring that. I didn't know that, but another intern had informed me of that. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm I wasn't really aware of it, right? So until someone like lets us know, right? Shanita, you were saying how Tanya was describing your communication style. So also if we're open,
She changed it.
Oh, she did.
Yeah, she said aggressive is not a good thing because I'm not aggressive, and I
Description. But it's really good to get outsiders' feedback, right? To give us feedback because it's just from a different perspective, right? How we started this communication site with our own perspective. So I just like always being open to feedback because as we said, right, we're always learning, right? And our communication style. And sometimes there's particular clients that hit certain buttons. They know what buttons to push, right? Woo, I got some big eye, right? And so also, if we need to, at other agencies I've worked at, we would tap out. We would pass it on to another colleague and say, I'm tapping out for this time before I need to go recollect myself. And so that's also something that if that's an opportunity to do, make sure you take a break when needed, when agitated. And you know what? I'm gonna get a snack, get a granola bar, use the bathroom, and let's revisit this conversation. So if we're finding that our pitch and tone is getting out of control, we can always take a step back.
Definitely. So pitch is when seeking our emotions can come into play. So kind of going to come back to Shanita's example. You said, I notice my body posture changes because I'm going to say something. And a lot of times it might be that pitch changes, right? For a lot of people, when they are uncertain, they'll get a strain here. When they're experiencing sadness or fear, there's a strain in their voice. With anger, there's we're kind of talking volume changes. Yep, goes up. Pitch, it could be, we get lower in tone with aggression. So that's that, or I guess lower in pitch with that aggression. So it changes. If we're angry, upset, or frustrated, pitch could raise, could lower, depending on the person, conveying to the listener that we are experiencing a strong emotion. And while it's not wrong to demonstrate to our clients that we're human too, and we have emotions, there is a difference of whether or not we're managing our emotions or if we're letting our emotions dictate how we're responding to that person. So yes, you're human, and we're also helping professionals. So if we're not going to be helpful in a situation like Natalie's sharing, tap out, get that break. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but we do need to be able to control it and make sure that we're effectively communicating. And that's one of my favorite parts about the process of being a helping professional. We can always go back to things. You know, there's been times where it's, hey, I realized how that came out or how that sounded. I'd like to revisit that. I want to, you know, we had this conversation and, you know, I maybe felt a certain way after leaving. I wanted to see how you felt, right? So we can make conversations ongoing. It's an open dialogue and we can come back to these things. We can say things a different way.
Mm. We can always revisit. That's
So,
something that I am grateful for. Our tone, right? So we all encounter situations that are frustrating or upsetting. Yeah, I recently had an example of, I didn't lose my cool. I just said, this is very concerning. And I repeated myself multiple times. So I was really proud of my the way I handled it, and my tone was really good. Yeah, but it didn't match what I was feeling, so it was awkward for me, right? Because my tone was calm, but inside I was not. But that was really good. So allowing that to change our tone from calm and professional to curt, short, or rude is always a mistake. Where we can be passive aggressive and take those little digs. So also less is more, right? How many times have we heard, if you're not going to say anything nice, don't say
bite
anything.
your tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Tongue in cheek. Yep. All these expressions.
Yes. Tone conveys a lot of information to our listener, right? And about how we view them, right? So even though we're not saying some type of thing, our tone matters. Yes. And being aware of that. I wasn't as much until I got more in the clinical realm. But definitely being more intentional with my tone and it has been very helpful to build positive interpersonal relationships. We should all endeavor to speak in a professional and respectful tone, right? If we're talking down to someone, I had a client who was really frustrated and I kept moving my hands down and he was like, stop doing that. He was so mad. He got so mad at me, but I had to put my hands in my pockets and I was like, okay. But I think at that time, he was just in a place where anything I was going to say was not going to be effective. So we were able to readdress that. Yeah. And also our tone can be kind of, be careful that we're not condescending, right? And that authoritative figure. Oh, I think they were covering yawn or feeling like they're condescending. Yeah.
I have the tendency to go monotone. The more frustrated I get, I've learned instead of yelling, I'll just lower my tone and talk to you like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's something really good for us all to be aware of. Also on the opposite end, right? When we're talking de-escalation, and we'll get into that more, tone of clients is going to be one of the first signals, you know, and how we receive that, what that feels like to us can be one of the first signals of how are we going to respond to that? Are we going to be the ones to offer up the break? Like, hey, you know, I think right now might be a good time for you to take a walk. I'm gonna sit with this and we can come back in 10 minutes, right? Sometimes is a really good signal to us. So if you notice it, you might have to be really intentional about it to get our tone to reflect what we want for it to reflect.
Yes. We're gonna keep going.
Keep going on this one.
I'm trying to, oh yeah, because we're almost, okay. So content. So of course the content is the most important part of verbal communication, right? What information are we providing to the individual, right? What are we saying? Saying what we mean, meaning what we say. And then also like, hey, this is what did you understand? What's your understanding of our conversation? And when they repeat it back, and then you can, so Nicole had given that example, which is very important. While most office communications tend to be more formal, for example, than meeting with a friend for coffee, we should make sure we leave space for personal chats and relationship building. Content. Yes. Also think about, right, because we want to build rapport with our clients, also have rapport with our colleagues, but how to finding that balance of content, right? We want to say that we had a restful weekend, but not share all of it, right? That we were on the couch binge watching Dexter. I don't know. Think about how technical your content is, right? Depending on the clients, also when they were born, right? Also, if I'm using information that or language slang that my teenage clients are using, and I'm trying to use it with someone who's in their 60s, there's going to probably be a big communication gap. So making sure about that, I'm finding that I have to be aware of like who I'm speaking to and what words I'm using. Especially if you have like teenagers at home, that's fun. If you're talking with developer, right? So just being very aware of the content that you're using.
So this is like our jargon. Case managers, you guys run so many different acronyms that you know what they mean, and that your colleagues know what they mean, and even outside of the agency referrals, you know what it is. But breaking that down for clients and for their understanding. I right now in IOP have someone who has an intellectual disability, and so even more so, I am making sure that I'm using simple sentence structure. I'm speaking slow enough that I can be easily understood. That's a bad tendency I have, is I can talk really fast. And so slowing it down intentionally, and then even doing one-to-one work with her so that she can understand the content of what we're going through in the groups, and that she can still benefit from that group process.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be really intentional with this. And with our acronyms, make sure that we're breaking that down for clients.
Yes. And then, so anybody remember the game Telephone? Anybody back in like elementary school days? Yes. And so what is your best memory of this? What was the outcome?
It was always, funny, like what ended up being said at the very end.
Okay, funny at the end.
Like after the word or the sentence got through everybody, it'd always be mixed up at the end of it.
Yeah.
What was first started, by the time it came to the end, was totally different.
It usually didn't survive.
Not at all.
Right. Never the same.
Never. Never.
Humorous, and also is a really good analogy for how the telephone can be when we communicate. We are a very large entity, a very large agency, and so there's a lot of moving parts in it. There's a lot when y'all are doing linkages and referrals, and you're communicating to providers and then trying to relay that information to clients, or vice versa. Our clients are going through all these different agency sectors, and then they're coming to us and saying, well, I talked to so-and-so and this, and then this happened. And then, so it's really important that we are, as much as possible, communicating directly to our clients, directly to providers, to help mitigate some of this telephone game that goes on.
Yes. And I want to, so today we have wrapped up. So I'm going to directly tell you all that our next part of our training is on Wednesday at 8 a.m. and we will pick up where we left off in communication.
Good to see you all. I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Yeah.
And see you on Wednesday.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate
Thank
it. Thank you, everyone. Nice meeting everyone. Take care.
Now, you gonna send me a link?
Great to see y'all.
Yeah.
If you wanted to stop recording and stay on, you could probably do that.
Oh yeah, that'll be easy. So stop recording.